I just had my worst KVK in 5 years, and my account progression to be called a fighter by TSN Lambo, Redline, Apocalypse Gaming, and Pluto Gaming in just 6 months can be completely destroyed. Here is a complete story of my worst performing KVK and what happened to make it one of the worst KVKs I've ever been a part of. Sit back, grab some popcorn, and enjoy this long form Rise of Kingdoms storytelling movie. And first, before I start, yes, I skipped a KVK. I will tell that story in a few weeks, but I have already migrated, and that is the reason why I have to tell this story, as you guys could understand why I migrated to this Imperium kingdom. So yes, I know what you all are thinking. Maybe this is the video where King Schmuck doesn't rank me as an A tier content creator. I mean, as a creator that is on par with someone that just farmed gems. I don't know, maybe it's because of my boring voice. What do you think, chat? This specific KVK started just about 2 months ago, and I knew it was going to be a difficult KVK for myself to boost up in stats because after my previous KVK, it left me with nothing for speed ups, literally in the 70 days range. However, I wailed out. I maxed out a couple of Call of the Ancients, maxed out every single speed up inside the VIP shop weekly, bought healing, training, and universal speed ups in the courier shop every single day. And most importantly, I was in a good Fort Kingdom that allowed me to farm up alliance chests. But after being down to just around 60 days of speed ups after my last KVK, I was able to recoup to over 1,000 universal days and over 600 days training before the first fights begin. So let's get into the matchup. It was a mighty A-seed King of all Britain's KVK. After communicating with some of the biggest A-seeds, we all agreed to go into this Kings of all Britain to attempt to set ourselves up with one of the biggest A-seed KVKs in recent memories. Kingdoms like 2654, 1719, 3355, 2217, 2650, and 1473. Some mammoth fighting A-seed kingdoms. However, when fighting A-seed kingdoms attempt to organize the best A-seed KVK pool possible, and you have kingdoms like 606 who needs to register, it was almost certain that some Imperium would try to snipe us. And lo and behold, just before reset, 1606 swapped from Heroic Anthem to Kings of all Britain. 2377 and 2489 followed suit to try to snipe them. And many of the kingdoms I wanted to face were now dragged into the Imperium pool. And sadly for our dear friends of 1473, they were forced to be campmates with 3535. But that meant 3371, my former kingdom, was still in one of the biggest A-seed KVKs currently, as our camp of Northumbria was completely stacked. It featured some key fighting kingdoms of 3065, 3331, 3355, and ourselves, Kingdom 3371, making this camp easily the strongest camp in all of KVK, with over 92 billion camp power, large amounts of CH25 farms, and over 2.15 trillion kill points. However, the other camps had some very great fighting kingdoms also. In East Anglia, Kingdom 2715, who we talked with before KVK started to register for the same pop, was placed with fighting kingdoms of 2804, 2860, and 3238, making East Anglia a very well balanced and great opponent, as they registered at 62.8 billion power and 1.89 trillion kill points. A very strong camp. Meanwhile, To our left, in Camp Mercia, it featured some well-known A-seed fighters like Kingdoms 1256, 2405, 2545, and 3263, coming together at 57.8 billion power and 1.85 trillion KP. And lastly, to our south, Camp Wessex, which at 58.9 billion power and 1.77 trillion kill points was a formidable camp with kingdoms like 2075, 2914, 2964, and 3277. Even though this wasn't the KVK we originally planned for, it was going to be an elite fighting KVK nonetheless. And with me going back to my home in America, I was able to have a working gaming PC where I could stream and record all the content I want, albeit A-tier content. Right, Schmuck? Anyways, once the matchmaking was solidified, we were left to do diplomacy, which thankfully was very easy. There was only two available options: Northumbria allying either East Anglia or Mercia. This is because Wessex did not want to do a cross-ally map. Not entirely sure for the exact reasons, but our camp decided to want to fight East Anglia, along with feeling like Mercia would be a fun and good ally. So, with the map set, allies set, and camp prepared, you would think it was only a matter of time before our camp just completely dominated KVK. I mean, we had over 30 billion more power and close to 400 million KP advantage over the closest camp. Well, my dear beautiful viewer, you would be completely wrong. After teleporting into KVK, I did what any basic rock player should do. I bought every single pop-up and Conqueror's Will since I am trapped in this spending cycle. But after I barely did anything in the first week, as I was preoccupied in real life, my crystal tech was pretty average. However, ever since my last KVK video, my marches improved a lot, upgrading my original 7 marches from this to this, along with my gear upgrading from 1 crit to this. It was a true masterpiece. Don't mind all the rest of the gear not being crit, we don't look at that right now. But either way, all this will help me towards my ultimate goal for this KVK. Grow from 6.38 billion KP to 10 billion kill points. A mammoth goal. However, I wanted to challenge myself to the impossible. But heading into Zone 5, everything looked perfect. We had a camp that was filled with experienced fighters, whales, and heavy spenders, along with a shared desire of needing to get Artox. I really needed another hunter, so we prepared for war. We lined up outside of the Pass 5, prepped our swarmers, and got ready to random TP out and destroy East Anglia. It was time for war. The moment the pass opened, our big Kraken swarmed it, taking the pass just after 2715, our enemies in the east. Thankfully, they were slow at placing their blocking AFs, as we were able to mountain hop from our passes, narrowly allowing us to be able to follow our original plan. And just minutes later, a plethora of forts were dropped, and it was a race against time for both sides to push and take down as many forts as possible. However, my job was to kill as many troops as possible, so without a second thought, I set out towards random TPing and destroying enemy marches. It took me over 30 randoms to finally get to a spot where I can not only KP chase, but mainly hope my kingdom, as I teleported right between the enemy AFs. So I did what any reasonable fighter would do in this situation: send out my marches and pick off players whilst the ball of my kingdom fought the enemy ball camp. I felt like an EPG pilot for a quick second, but I felt bad and made my way to fight with our ball and got some amazing KP. However, as we went back and forth against East Anglia in the open field, an interesting scenario was playing out with territory, as both sides dropped their AFs here a clear signal that everyone desired to surround and secure the Castrum that would give 3% all damage. The most impressive and most crucial structure in Zone 5. But besides the AF spam around this structure, which held 11 different Alliance fortresses, there was a much more interesting scenario happening in both sides' flag paths. Both us and East Anglia were dropping AF after AF to disrupt each other's flagging paths, making it take forever for each other to get to our own Alliance fortresses next to the Castrum as fast as possible. It was so bad that we had to wait until all of our Alliance fortresses to be built to finally have territory close to the structure. However, we were able to come in way faster on the left side, allowing us to take down some enemy Alliance fortresses on our side of the Castrum, thanks to the amazing team over in 3331. But territory was set, and it was a disaster. Now, I know you aren't much of a general in war, let alone a guru for war territory, so this might be hard to fully understand. But look how much territory they have. More specifically, look at how surrounded the Castrum is here. But more importantly than that, look at the terrain where our territory is. The 3371 Alliance Fortress is essentially cornered due to this mountain range, whilst most of our flag territory is a 5 or more minute walk away from our Alliance Fortress. Meanwhile, 3355 has little to no usable territory due to this English chapel and the same sort of mountain ranges 71 has issue with. Our territory on the left side is a bit more useful, however, as 3065 located here has tons of TP space, but is trapped in a front of multiple enemy Alliance fortresses and lots of enemy flags, making it a nightmare to help around the Castrum. And finally, Booze 3331 also had territory that was essentially useless to the main focus area for fighting, however, still useful. But any reasonable fighting kingdom would look at this map and make 3 essential war decisions, or at least me. First, push from Booze around East Anglia, creating more fronts and trying to surround the enemies. Remember, we had greater numbers and bigger power, so it would be easy to do this. The next would be to focus 3371 on the right side, making this a prong style attack to not only gain territory, but to attempt to get 71 territory on the southeast of the Castrum, to attempt to circle around 3238 Alliance fortresses, and to get more territory closer to our AF. And lastly, the middle attack that pushes through 3371 around the Castrum to ensure that everything stays burning, mainly focusing on any flags and preparing perfectly timed balls to burn the AFs. But this all sounds a bit simple, right? I think it would have made sense to gain useful territory whilst drawing attention away from this middle area, because the more territory we gain and the enemies lose, we gain more and more advantages. However, this is simply not what happened. We solely focused right here, making it a complete nightmare for any city that wasn't teleported on this Alliance fortress to come reinforce in field fight. Although we did manage to go on the right side of 71's Alliance fortress, albeit late, we were able to keep a lot of the territory, pushing when possible, but also not taking the best trades because of our simple mistakes in tunnel vision. It clearly became a test of who will tap out first. Our field was strong, completely destroying East Anglia most of the time, as many of their players began to take very negative trades on the field. However, this zone was completely frustrating at times, as territory was a crucial issue. But by the time Castrum was about to open, the territory changed to this, making some impressive progress. However, East Anglia was prepared to fight, as the battle for this Castrum was not only going to be long, but extremely bloody. It was a bright and early morning, at least for me. It was calm, and I just started to stream. But this was no ordinary morning. It was the day that dictated the entirety of Zone 5, or if we would lose this first battle against East Anglia. So both sides brought out their entire field. East Anglia woke up and brought every single player to secure this Castrum. It was tough. Our cities were minutes away from being able to refresh troops. The majority of our field was also cut off by this alliance fortress, making any refreshments extremely staggered, whilst East Anglia's territory completely surrounded the structure, making their cities ideal for the perfect refresh time. This made the battle very one-sided for East Anglia. It was a battle of the ages, our field versus their field. Every single march on both sides was fully focusing on to take this structure. Just an hour before the Castrum opened, we were focusing on burning the territory around the structure. We kept our ball on the top left, beating back their marches as we pushed towards their territory. Eventually, with just under an hour left until the Castrum opened, we made our big push towards this 15 MB Alliance Fortress. This was one of the biggest ball fights in the Zone 5 fight for now, and it was an absolute bloodbath. Our marches slamming into theirs, pushing them back inch by inch, quickly pushing them away from the Alliance Fortress as our refresh marches came to the back of our ball, holding them from attempting to flank our right side. And finally, minutes late, our rally made it to the Alliance Fortress on the completely wrong side. The enemies began to swarm the rally, creating a hefty hospital bill for them, but a major issue for us, as our goal was to take this Alliance Fortress down. And as all our field retreated back to support the rally, it gave them the ability to swarm and push our field, utterly breaking and destroying us. And now, with just 40 minutes left, the most northern enemy flag on the right side of the Castrum was finally destroyed, enabling us to gain more territory, along with teleporting in some more of our top fighters closer to the eventual action of the Castrum fight. It also gave us the ability to build a brand new flag so we could push 3238 further in. And finally, after the flag was finally built, there was 20 minutes left until the structure opened. Both sides balled up, waiting for the perfect time to push the other side. It was like watching a winner-take-all middle battle in an Osiris League match. Both sides kept gaining more and more until one side took the first move. It was East Anglia, and they gained a lot of fighters from earlier on, and they began their huge push towards us, gaining ground and positioning their superior numbers on our side of the structure, essentially being able to protect and block us from ever reaching it. Obviously, like any good ball, our players began to run away, but all seriousness, their ball was larger than ours. It's hard to tell by how much, but during this fight, it seemed like they were at least double our numbers, especially with their siege marches. Our ball was staying in place, trying to not give up any inch. However, due to our massive issues with territory and refresh time, it was almost impossible for us to keep up with their numbers. It was also hard because we weren't pushing in as hard as we should have. We stayed back, attempting to keep our ground, but with time ticking until the structure would eventually open, our strategy was getting destroyed. But just as we were losing hope, we finally were able to gain some crucial ground by pushing East Anglia back, taking away the top left of the structure. However, as East Anglia still outnumbered us, we were being pushed through two fronts, the north and the south areas of this structure. But there were only seconds left. We needed to make a desperate push to get rid of the enemy marches. But that was right when the shield was disabled from the Castrum. And that was also the exact moment that East Anglia began their formidable swarm on the structure. And because they had the majority of the area around the structure, it quickly fell for East Anglia to take the first capture, a crushing blow to morale. But this meant we had to pivot and change our goal, as now we needed to take the structure and secure it, because the zone was not entirely over. We still had confidence that we were able to win, and we still all wanted to continue to fight. So we went on a counter offensive, pushing our entire field towards their ball, attempting to clear the field so we could rally the structure. By the time our rally hit, we were able to control the far majority of the field, pushing our troops far beyond the structure, attempting to block any form of reinforcements. And although our field was working, our rally was getting little to no reinforcements, as our whole objective was pushing the field, and because we had none of our CH-25 farms close to the vicinity of this structure. So the rally died, and subsequently our field withdrew, giving up the valuable field territory we just made. And for the next 2 hours, it was more or less the same, as East Anglia would park all their fields on top of the structure, trying to secure it until the shield was again activated, which they were able to do. In closer to 18 UTC, I had to leave as the final of the Supreme Strife tournament was on. And yes, I am currently working on the script and editing of that amazing video, so stay tuned. After Strife, I ended streaming for the day. After streaming more than 15 hours straight, and during this time, we were able to slowly push back East Anglia, burning all the flags around the structure, as well as being able to get some crucial burns in on the Alliance fortresses. Meanwhile, alliances like Booze were on the left side, and our sub-alliances that were flanking on the right side were not only getting burns, but being able to gain massive amounts of territory. This created a scenario where I'm sure East Anglia had two options: continue to push and either be successful in an offensive that usually did happen during our downtimes but was still difficult to do, or else take the victories and losses that they made during this pass opening and save for pass 7 and mainly Kingsland. And they chose the latter by deciding to abandon the zone and wait for what is more to come later in the KVK. It was a victory for us, Northumbria. I don't know if you could really count it as a victory, but nonetheless, it was a victory. And it was a difficult zone, made even more difficult by the situation we found ourselves in. There were a lot of camp problems, but we showed that we can be a formidable camp, as long as we can fix the key issues that popped up later in the KVK. But the stats were finalized, and I was able to gain just over 870 million KO points, along with just under 1.5 million T5 deads within the 2 to 3 days of fighting in Zone 5. Not amazing, as I've done better before, but I did want to save for an eventual huge Kingsland battle that we all knew was coming. Meanwhile, as a camp, Northumbria was able to gain 127 billion kill points and took 440 million deaths while only healing 5.5 million units. A very positive trade, as East Anglia was only able to gain 109 billion kill points whilst taking 433 million deaths and having to heal over 6.4 million units, showcasing how hard we as a camp were able to hit East Anglia and how we were able to take clear positive trades against them, something that was seen almost the entirety of the fighting in Zone 5 but not taken advantage of in the rest of the KVK. It was a mighty Northumbria fighting the fearsome warriors of East Anglia, preparing for the first of many altar fights. After our win in Zone 5, this battle was to put the nail in the coffin to not only diminish the speed-ups and resources of East Anglia, but to continue to demoralize our enemies before Kingsland. So this altar was not only a place for us to gain more momentum and confidence as a camp, but more importantly, it was somewhere for me to experiment on which march would be best in Kings of all Britain altar fighting, something that would be crucial to know for the Rise of Kingdoms community. But more importantly, a chance for me to farm some amazing content so I could get out of this A tier, right schmuck? But it was time for me to prepare for this altar fighting. I prepared my tech by maxing everything beneficial for this fighting. Meanwhile, I prepped my commanders and gear, as I would just test 3 main marches, which included the best commanders in the entire game. My first march was QSH and ZL, undoubtedly not only the best archer march in the game, but let's be honest, the best overall march in the entire game. This march would feature my best equipment: the 2 archer Seasons of Conquest gear, a crit and level 2 Ancestral Mask of the Night, and only a normal level 1 version of the Hydra's Blast, whilst also showcasing a fully level and crit Milky Way chestplate and leadership pants, and level 3 crit leadership boots and Ian Choice gloves. And lastly, 1 level 2 crit Ring of the Doom and a level 1 crit Horn of Fury. The second march I tested is the best infantry march in the entire game, Baichi and Luce, with my best infantry gear, a fully uncrit set featuring the infantry KVK helmets and weapon, the helm of the Conqueror, and the hammer of the sun and moon, whilst featuring a level 2 leadership boots, level 1 hope cloak, sacred grips, leadership pants, ring of doom, and Karok drums, making this a very mediocre set of equipment. And lastly, our cavalry march, Fuo and Ragnar Prime. Yes, I did say that right. Ragnar Prime. Remember, this is Kings of all Britain, making Ragnar be able to change his skills from infantry to any other troop type. And with this pairing, I used my best cavalry gear, both of the cavalry KVK equipment pieces, the Pride of the Khan helmet and the Sacred Dominion weapon, with the typical cavalry equipment filling out the rest of the gear. The level 1 versions of the Hallish chestplate and boots, a level 3 Ash of the Dawns, and level 1 Navarre controls, Ring of the Doom, and Horn of the Fury. And with this finally explained, we could go straight to fighting. East Anglia took the first move by gathering their entire ball at the most southern choke points, making it so that we had one of 2 ways to push them, or else attempt to reposition them by going to the most northern point here. However, that would leave our refresh marches open to gain poked by their kill point chasers. So with plenty of time remaining before the altar opened, we began to inch our ball towards the enemy's ball. And once we began to engage, it was time for my QSH and ZL to shine, as a double AoE would completely feast in a scenario like this. With so many targets on the battlefield, it was inevitable for this march to spread out its insane and constant damage to as many enemy marches as possible. It was dealing so much damage as we pushed East Anglia's ball further and further back, eventually to their own pass, leaving us with a beautiful report as we refresh our march, as we only took 26,000 severely wounded, whilst causing nearly 193,000 severely wounded to the enemies, earning us 3.7 million kill points in a single march. The next round was for Baichi and Luce to shine, as this march had many strengths: AoE, smite damage, and tankiness. However, some of the drawbacks were the march's slowness, and compared to the previous march, the less AoE damage it does in a single ball march. However, it is still one of the best marches in the game, and it was doing some amazing work on the field as the enemies would begin to push our ball, attempting to get back towards the inside of the altar, but they were struggling to push us back at all, as our ball stayed together, as we would keep on pushing them and balling back to make them come push us again. But no matter what they would do, we would be able to beat them back to their pass. But my Baichi got weak fast, so I recalled being able to refresh. This march was able to get to a 1-to-3 ratio, which is not that bad, but still it didn't have as much damage as the previous march, which led us to the final experiment to conduct, which was Huo and Ragnar Prime. This cavalry march would excel at march speed, quickness, damage output, and inside this altar, march sustainability, due to it being able to heal itself. But the big downside, which is a major flaw of this particular march, would be it only being a single target damage. However, due to the heal, this march was able to fight for multiple pushes, over 30 minutes to be precise before I decided to refresh it. And in those 30 minutes, our ball was completely dominating East Anglia, keeping them far away from the middle altar. And with only 10 minutes left before the altar opened, I decided to reset my march, even though it didn't really need to be. However, having a full march to support the final incoming push from East Anglia would be beneficial for our ball. So, with Huo finally leaving, the report was beautiful. Still not as amazing as my QSH, but it was way more positive than my Baichi Luce march, trading nearly 1 to 3 and gaining over 4.7 million KP. It was also my most sustaining march, making it just even a little bit more valuable. But as it passed through our pass, I decided to bring out the best march in all of Rise of Kingdoms, QSH and ZL, to finish out the altar, as we would reposition ourselves to be in the bottom left of the altar, blocking the quickest way in for East Anglia to challenge us in the altar. And East Anglia did try, but it was over. We had won. We beat them without any doubts. Honestly, it was a lot easier than I thought, but following this win in the altars, East Anglia did not push at any of the other altars, electing to continue to save for Pass 7 and King's Land, which was mere days away. This Pass 7 was just like any Pass 7. It was completely dull. We prepared by setting up 3 Alliance fortresses on our side of the pass, whilst the enemies did 4 Alliance fortresses in the hopes to drain and delay us from pushing out into their zone. So, as the pass was able to become attackable, our swarm team got ready to hit the pass as fast as possible so we could take the pass first. And thankfully, our swarmers have fast fingers, as we were able to be the camp to secure the Pass 7 first, immediately letting us push out against East Anglia, who immediately crumbled following our major push out of this Pass 7. And afterwards, we would immediately push towards their buildings to burn. And that is what we did for 3 days straight. It was so boring. I mean, no offense to East Anglia, it's just really the Pass 7 design. But we kept burning East Anglia and kept them back until Wessex decided to drop an Alliance fortress right next to the pass to help their allies. But really, there was nothing going on. We took good trades, a few bad ones, Bar Openfield was clapping even during the 2v1. But none of this really mattered, because the real and decisive fight was to be held in King's Land. It was a 2v2 Kings of all Britain, Northumbria and Mercia against East Anglia and Wessex. 16 competitive fighting A-seed kingdoms. Until now, I only highlighted the brutality of the fighting between us, Northumbria, against East Anglia. But on the other side of the map, it was completely different. Wessex completely dominated Zone 5 due to internal issues Mercia faced. But that is not to say Wessex was a weak camp, because similarly to their allies in the East Anglia camp, they had 4 strong fighting kingdoms that hoisted an impeccable and active field. This was shown in altars, where Wessex took control during these fighting stages. And up until the opening of Pass 7, Wessex was seemingly completely fresh, as they had little to no fighting all of the KVK. However, this was where Mercia took their stand, as in their camp's eyes, they were defensive kingdoms, being able to always trade positively in their structures even without having field control. Their garrisons were strong, and they had a strong desire to not only fight, but to win this KVK. So when Pass 7 opened, they went on the defensive, taking rallies after rallies, but trading very well. But remember, even though they were draining Wessex, they were also draining themselves out too. And with how poor internal communications have been throughout this KVK, thanks to a certain kingdom, we knew it was going to be absolutely critical for us to aid Mercia during King's Land as fast and best as we could. So there we have it. 4 camps, 16 kingdoms, 2 sides, ready for this bloody Kingsland to open. On the enemy side, you had East Anglia, who thanks to us was low on speed ups, resources, and troops, but was still high on morale, something you will see soon. Then you had their allies to the south, Wessex, who were high on everything: troops, speed ups, resources, and morale, after facing little to no fighting. Then our side, our allies to the west, Mercia, who could be low on everything except being high on incompatibility with one another. And then us, who thanks to our enormous size and high spenders were a complete mix. Many of our high spenders, including myself, had billions and billions in resources, plenty of speed ups, troops, and more importantly, a desire to not only win, but to increase stats. However, there were quite a few players beginning to get low on speed ups and resources, mainly from my own kingdom, after a few just migrated into the kingdom, or else after being drained from our previous KVK. However, we still had the ability to win this KVK, so long as our plan and war leaders were reliable and impeccable. However, it was just seconds until the Kingsland Pass opened. My game plan was to random into the Kingsland after our swarm team took care of the pass, and then help on the front lines. And after randoming a bit, I discovered that our field was doing well. We were pushing Anglia back, but a lot of their players random and they got some really good spots. They were quite lucky. Our main focus was to push this corner, to have 30-65 hold and push, whilst the other kingdoms either assist or else help more towards the middle as our alliances push closer to the zig. And following the pass swarm, I noticed 2 things. The first was our field was doing very well. Like I said previously, we were pushing East Anglia back in the corner. However, the second is how slow our flags were compared to East Anglia. So I was wondering why were we so slow? Then I remembered how we took our pass with no buffing marches. Yes, it's 2025 and we didn't even organize this. And even more embarrassing, we didn't even have a proper swarm team for our second pass. So building out through 71 was unbelievably slow coming out of the Kingsland Pass. So our flags in 71 was unbelievably slow coming out of the left side Kingsland Pass, making it even easier for East Anglia marches to pick off our building marches. This meant that they not only were beating us on the right side of the pass of Kingsland, but also delaying us on our left side pass as well. We were losing a lot of territory. So I decided that I had to teleport to help protect our building marches on the left side of Kingsland, which was definitely boring, but had to be done to help our camp. And with my aura there, it quickly scared off the enemies around our building flags, which enabled us to freely build. This led me to be able to do the best thing ever, random TP, which quickly led me to my favorite moment of the entire KVK, fighting with Hassan, one of the kings of the best kingdoms, 3331, my moon. But sadly, all good times come to an end, and we both had to leave to go fight in the front lines. So I quickly TP'd to the front lines, joined voice calls, and started to open field. But just as quickly as I said all that, I entered the most painful voice call I have ever been in my life, filled with complete chaos. So I decided to rein in the fighters on the left side of Kingsland, the front that I was on, to a separate voice chat to lead there, which went, well, pretty amazing. We went on the left side and burned flags. We pushed them back from being on our side of the zig. We started to push them on the right side, preparing to push towards their Kingsland pass. It was going perfectly, a little too perfectly. We burnt their flags and then instantly pushed straight into them. We dominated the field, dominated their rallies, and dominated against their flags. We didn't even try to swarm many of these flags, being able to win all the reports and setting everything on fire. But that was just my side, because as we were winning on our front, the front of 3065 was getting completely burned. East Anglia couldn't beat us by the zig, so they focused on the corner, where they were completely dominating, burning every flag. Don't ask me how it came to this, as I don't have any footage since I was leading on the other front. However, it was bad. So bad that I was trumped over and our entire field was to be sent towards this corner to help. But you see where the problem is, right? They have been dominating there because of their strong field presence. We don't have the cities there to help support fighting them consistently. Us losing this area was bound to happen because leadership and even players never reacted quick enough. We did make attempts to send players there very early on into Kingsland, but a lot of players didn't listen to us. And instead of us continuing to attempt to make more ground and shave off enemy territory here, we marched minutes to the corner to fight against East Anglia. And since I was not going to lead there, I figured it was best for me to take a quick break to eat, as I didn't get to eat the entirety of that day due to streaming and war leading. And when I got back to the game, it was a total mess. Our field was watching East Anglia burn our flags, not pushing. We had no clear goal, and long story short, we were getting destroyed. This is a good point in this parts of the video to say that I'm not here saying that if I were to lead, we would have won, or this outcome would have been completely different, as I was not wanting to lead, and frankly I had no idea on what we planned or what we even wanted to do, as I didn't see any information and I didn't look for any information. However, I am here to say that when I led my left side, we were burning everything we touched. Jokes aside, this was where everything began to collapse, as when I got back, not only were we not leading our ball marches correctly on the right side, but we also lost all the progress I made around the zig. And I was only gone for a little more to half an hour to an hour. Not only was this frustrating, but now that there was no separate voice chats, I just sit in the original voice chat that I was annoyed at when Kingsland first started. This drove me mad and drove me to talk to one of my dear friends fighting on my second account whilst I was fighting on my main and mini accounts, my dear friend Rezo. And after being told what I missed, I decided to just teleport back to Zone 5 and take the night off, as I was too frustrated at the situation to even want to fight. Now, between these areas, I did throw some marches into our fighting balls to help a group of our fighters later in the night, where I took horrible trades, but I decided I will wait for the next big push. That was organized for the next day at around 12 UTC, but it never came, as there was no communications in leadership chats, no communication from leadership to members, and just not a glimpse of any desire to try another attempt to push back East Anglia from leadership. So it was over. A KVK where I needed to win, we had lost. A KVK where I spent a lot of time and effort into, we were completely humiliated, which was completely frustrating. Now, let me make this clear. These are all my opinions, but without a doubt, we had the ability to win. We had the strength to win. East Anglia was low on speed ups. It was just a matter of time until they broke. But instead of their speed ups drying up, it was the communication and the want to win from our leadership that withered away. And it was an amazing job from East Anglia. Let's be honest here. They didn't give up, and their members, as well as their leadership, were some of the best I'd fought against in a very long time. They deserved this win, and the eventual star that they gained from this KVK. We had an amazing fight, but my time was closing in 3371, as this KVK just had too many issues. Too much drama came out, but also being able to join the best alliance in the game was just way too appealing. So these were the final stats of my worst performing KVK to date. I had gained over 1.6 billion kill points through killing around 7 million T4 units and 75 million T5 units, meaning in total I had around 85 million kills. Along with this, I gained 2.5 million T5 deaths, a very low number. I used just around 550 days of speedups, meaning I had around 700 days left as I was waiting for a huge Kingsland fight. And many of these numbers were low, at least to me, because I thought we would have more of a Kingsland fight. But that never came, meaning this was a very disappointing KVK to be a part of as I chased to become an elite fighter in Rise of Kingdoms. So tell me, what do you think about what happened this KVK? And let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, as there will be many more videos here shortly on this channel. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed this Rise of Kingdoms storytelling movie.